When Eleanor died, the church was standing room only. Hundreds of people came to say goodbye to the woman they called a saint, the woman who never held a grudge. She had forgiven the father who raised his hand against her. She had forgiven the husband who broke his vows in their own bed. She had forgiven the friends who stole her money and her trust. Everyone said she had a heart of gold. Everyone said she was incapable of hate. But they were wrong. Eleanor hated one person with a fire that burned for 40 years. She spent every day of her life punishing this person, torturing this person. The only person Eleanor never forgave was the woman in the mirror. When Eleanor died, the church wasn't just full, it was overflowing. People stood in the aisles. They crowded into the vestibule. They spilled out onto the front steps in the rain. It was a Tuesday morning, a work day. But hundreds of people had taken the day off. They wore black, but they carried bright flowers. They came to say goodbye to a legend. The air inside the church smelled of lilies and damp wool. It was heavy with grief. But it was also heavy with gratitude. Everyone in that room had a story about Eleanor. The priest stood at the pulpit. He looked out at the sea of faces. He smiled sadly. "We are here," he said, "to honor the saint of 4th Street." A ripple of nodding heads went through the crowd. That was her name, the saint, the woman who never raised her voice, the woman who never held a grudge. An old man stood up to speak. His hands shook as he held the microphone. "She paid my rent," he wept. 3 months in a row. She never asked for a dime back." A young woman stood up next. She was holding a baby. "I crashed her car," she said. "I was 17 and reckless. I thought she would kill me." "She didn't yell," the girl continued. "She just hugged me. She asked if I was hurt. She told me cars can be replaced, but people can't. She forgave me before the police even arrived." Story after story, hour after hour, they painted a portrait of a woman who was too good for this world, a woman without a selfish bone in her body. They talked about her patience. They talked about her endless capacity for grace. They said she was incapable of hate. They said she was pure light. I sat in the back row. I listened to the eulogies. I watched the tears fall, and I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. Because I knew the truth. I knew the secret that Eleanor took to her grave. I knew that the woman in the casket wasn't a saint. She was a prisoner. 3 days earlier, I was sitting in a quiet room at the hospice center. The curtains were drawn. The machine next to the bed was humming. Hum. Click. Hum. Eleanor was awake. She was agitated. She was pulling at the sheets with thin, translucent fingers. Her eyes were wide. They were darting around the room, looking for an exit. "Eleanor," I said softly, "try to rest. Everyone is praying for you. Everyone loves you." I thought it would comfort her. I thought she wanted to hear about her legacy. She stopped moving. She looked at me. Her eyes were fierce. There was no peace in them. There was only panic and a deep, crushing shame. "They don't know me," she whispered. Her voice was like dry leaves scraping together. "They love a mask. They love a character I played. I am not a saint," she hissed. "I am a fraud. I have spent 80 years fooling them. And now I am going to die, and I don't deserve their tears. I don't deserve this peace," she said. Tears leaked from the corners of her eyes.
If they knew what I really was, if they knew the darkness inside me, they wouldn't bring flowers. They would bring stones, she whispered. I tried to hush her. You are a good person, Eleanor. You forgave everyone. She laughed. It was a bitter, broken sound. I forgave them, she said. Yes. I forgave the liars. I forgave the thieves. I forgave the man who hit me. But I never forgave the one person who truly deserved to be punished, she said. She pointed a trembling finger at her own chest. I hated her, she whispered. I spent 40 years hating her, punishing her, starving her of joy, and now I have to die with her. She closed her eyes. The machine beeped steadily, but the air in the room had changed. The saint was gone, and in the bed lay a woman who was terrified of her own reflection. The funeral continued. The choir began to sing Amazing Grace. The voices rose to the rafters. How sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I looked at the coffin. I wondered if Eleanor could hear them. I wondered if she finally felt saved, or if she was still in that hospice room, holding court against herself. The world saw a hero, but Eleanor saw a villain. And the tragedy wasn't that she died. The tragedy was that she lived her whole life trying to outrun a crime she never committed. She was the judge, the jury, and the executioner of her own soul, and she never granted herself a stay of execution, not even for a single day.
To understand the prison, you have to look at the architect. Eleanor didn't build this cage herself. The blueprints were handed to her when she was 5 years old. Her father was a hard man. He was a man made of sharp edges and sudden thunder. He didn't know how to be gentle. He only knew how to be right. He was a perfectionist, but not for himself, for everyone else. He demanded a world that was ordered, quiet, and obedient, and Eleanor was his favorite project. He didn't hit her often. He didn't have to. His words were heavier than his fists. His disappointment was a physical weight that settled on her shoulders. If she spilled milk at the dinner table, it wasn't an accident. It was a moral failing. Clumsy, he would sneer. Careless. Why can't you pay attention? If she cried because she scraped her knee, she wasn't hurt. She was weak. Stop that noise, he would command. Tears are for babies. Are you a baby? Eleanor learned quickly. Children are survivalists. They study the giants who rule their world. They figure out what keeps them safe. She learned that apologies were magic spells. If she apologized quickly enough, the anger stopped. If she took the blame instantly, the thunder didn't roll. "I'm sorry, Papa," she said. It was her most used phrase. She said it when it rained. She said it when the toast burned. She said it when he had a bad day at work. She apologized for taking up space. She apologized for having needs. She apologized for existing. She learned to make herself small. She learned to fold herself into corners. She discovered that forgiveness was a tactic. When her father yelled, she didn't get angry back. Anger was dangerous. Anger made the fire bigger. Instead, she forgave him, immediately. "He doesn't mean it," she told herself. "He is just tired. He works so hard for us." She became the peacemaker, the shock absorber. She took the blows meant for her mother. She took the blows meant for her brothers. She absorbed the toxicity of the house into her own body. By the time she was 10,
The equation was set in stone. It was carved into her neural pathways. It became her operating system. The equation was simple. Everyone else is allowed to be human. Everyone else is allowed to make mistakes. Everyone else deserves grace. But I must be perfect. If I am perfect, I am safe. If I am perfect, I am lovable. If I make a mistake, I am nothing. I am the clumsiness. I am the weakness. She policed herself relentlessly. She watched her own behavior like a hawk. Was she too loud? Was she too needy? Did she smile enough? She learned to suppress her own anger. Anger was her father's emotion, and she promised herself she would never be like him. So she swallowed her rage. She swallowed her sadness. She swallowed her desires. She became a vessel for other people's comfort. She became the good girl. The neighbors praised her. "Eleanor is so mature," they said. "She is such a little helper." Her father beamed. "Yes," he said, "she knows her place." Her place was second. Her place was last. Her place was to be the sponge that soaked up the mess so no one else had to get dirty. She grew up thinking this was virtue. She thought she was being kind. She didn't realize she was being groomed. She was being trained to accept unacceptable things. She entered adulthood with a target on her back. She was a beacon for broken people. She was a magnet for takers, because she had no boundaries. She had forgotten where she ended and other people began. She thought it was her job to fix the world, and if she couldn't fix it, she believed it was her fault. She didn't know how to say no. No was a dangerous word. No caused conflict, and Eleanor would do anything at all, to avoid conflict. So she said yes. She said yes to everything. She said yes to everyone, except herself. To herself, she said no 1,000 times a day. This was the training. This was the foundation. The saint was built on a bedrock of fear. The grace was built on a bedrock of trauma. And the little girl who spilled the milk was still inside her, terrified, waiting for the yelling to start, waiting to be punished for the crime of being human.
When Eleanor met Richard, it felt like destiny. But it wasn't destiny. It was pattern recognition. We fall in love with what feels familiar, even if what feels familiar is pain. Richard was charming. He had a smile that could light up a room. He brought her flowers. He told her she was an angel. He told her she was the only good thing in his life. But Richard was broken. He was a man with a hole in his soul that nothing could fill. He drank to forget. He gambled to feel alive. The red flags were there from the beginning. He stood her up on dates. He borrowed money and forgot to pay it back. He snapped at waiters. Eleanor didn't run. She leaned in. Her training kicked in. He is hurting, she told herself. He needs me. I can fix him. I can love him enough to heal him. The community whispered. Her friends tried to warn her. He is bad news, Eleanor. They will drag you down. Run while you can. But Eleanor saw herself as a savior. Leaving him would be selfish. Leaving him would mean she failed. And Eleanor did not allow herself to fail. She married him. She stood at the altar and promised to love him for better or for worse. She didn't know that worse would be the only thing on the menu. The marriage was a battlefield, but only one side was fighting. Richard fought the world. He fought his demons. He fought her.
Eleanor fought for peace. She fought to keep the secrets. She hid the liquor bottles. She paid the gambling debts from her grocery money. She lied to the neighbors to cover his tracks. He would stay out all night. She would wait by the window, terrified. When he stumbled in at dawn, smelling of cheap whiskey and perfume, she didn't scream. She made him coffee. She helped him to bed. She put a cool cloth on his forehead. "Shh," she whispered. "It's okay. Sleep now." She forgave him before he even apologized. Usually, he didn't apologize. He expected her forgiveness. He felt entitled to it because she gave it so freely. Then came the infidelity. It wasn't just a suspicion, it was proof. A hotel receipt in his pocket. A phone number on a napkin. She stared at the paper. Her heart shattered. The pain was physical. It felt like her chest was being ripped open. She wanted to scream. She wanted to throw his clothes on the lawn. But a voice in her head stopped her. "If you get angry, you are like your father," the voice said. "If you leave, you are giving up. Good wives don't give up." She convinced herself that tolerance was strength. She told herself that staying was the noble choice. "Love endures all things," she repeated, like a mantra. She confronted him. He cried. He blamed the alcohol. He blamed his childhood. He blamed the stress of work. He made himself the victim. And Eleanor comforted him. She held the man who betrayed her. She stroked his hair while he wept about his own weakness. "I forgive you," she said. "We will get through this. I won't leave you." She thought she was being a saint. She thought she was displaying unconditional love. She didn't see that she was enabling a monster. She didn't see that she was abandoning herself. Every time she forgave him without consequence, she chipped away a piece of her own self-respect. She buried her rage deep down. She pushed it into the cellar of her soul. She locked the door. She pretended it wasn't there. But the rage didn't die. It festered. It turned inward. Since she couldn't be angry at Richard, she became angry at herself. "I should have been prettier," she thought. "I should have been more fun. If I was a better wife, he wouldn't need other women." She took the blame for his sins. She carried his shame as if it were her own. She scrubbed the floors until her hands bled, trying to clean a stain that wasn't on the carpet. She made him breakfast the next morning. Pancakes, bacon, coffee. She smiled as she set the plate down. "Here you go, honey," she said. Richard looked at her with awe. "You are an angel, Eleanor," he said. "I don't deserve you." He was right. He didn't deserve her. But Eleanor didn't hear a compliment. She heard a challenge. She had to prove she was worthy of the pedestal he put her on. She had to be the angel, because if she wasn't the angel, she might have to be a human woman, and a human woman would have burned the house down.
Then came the baby, Claire. She was born on a rainy Tuesday. She was small and pink and perfect. Eleanor looked at her daughter and felt a love so fierce it terrified her. But along with the love came the fear. It was a cold, sharp dread that settled in her stomach. "I am responsible for this soul," she thought. "I cannot break her." She remembered her own childhood. She remembered the fear of her father's footsteps. She remembered the spilled milk. She remembered the feeling of being a burden. She made a vow in that hospital bed. It wasn't a promise. It was a blood oath. "I will never be like him," she whispered. "I will be perfect. I will be the mother I never had." She set the bar at perfection. Not good enough, not trying, perfect. She decided she would never raise her voice. She would never lose patience. She would never be tired. She brought Claire home to a house that was already a battlefield. Richard was drinking. The money was tight. The stress was hanging in the air like smoke. But Eleanor built a bubble around Claire. "You are safe here," she told the baby. "Mommy will handle everything." She put on her armor. She became a machine of motherhood. She woke up every 2 hours. She breastfed until she was raw. She changed diapers with a smile. She sang lullabies even when she was weeping inside. She suppressed her own needs completely. Hunger was ignored. Sleep was a luxury she denied herself. If she felt frustrated, she swallowed it. Good mothers don't get frustrated, she told herself. She read every book. She followed every rule. She ironed the baby clothes. She made her own organic baby food. She was performing motherhood for an audience of ghosts. She was trying to prove to her father that she was worthy. She was trying to prove to Richard that she was an angel. And she was trying to prove to herself that she wasn't a monster. But the pressure was building. You cannot suppress human emotion forever. It has to go somewhere. Eleanor was a pressure cooker with the lid screwed on too tight. When Claire cried for hours with colic, Eleanor rocked her. Her back ached, her head pounded. A tiny voice in her head screamed, "Please stop, just stop." She was terrified of that voice. She thought the voice proved she was evil. A good mother loves every moment, she thought. Why am I angry? What is wrong with me? She didn't know that every mother feels that way. She didn't know that exhaustion makes us crazy. She thought it was her specific defect. She doubled down. She tried harder. She smiled wider. She engaged in aggressive patience. She spoke in a soft, sing-song voice that masked the screaming in her head. She protected Claire from Richard's chaos. When he came home drunk, she hid Claire in the nursery. "Daddy is sick," she lied. She painted a pretty picture over the ugly truth. She absorbed the stress for her daughter. She filtered the toxins of their life through her own body. She wanted Claire to think the world was soft. But a child knows. Claire was happy, but she was watchful. She sensed the tension in her mother's shoulders. She sensed the frantic energy behind the smile. Eleanor was exhausting herself. She was running a marathon at a sprint. She was trying to be a saint, a shield, and a servant all at once. She denied herself any outlet. She didn't have friends she could complain to. Complaining was betrayal. Complaining was weakness. "I am blessed," she told everyone. "Claire is an angel." She isolated herself in her perfection. She couldn't let anyone see the cracks. If she admitted she was tired, the facade would crumble. She looked at other mothers in the park. They looked relaxed. They laughed when their kids fell down. They checked their watches. Eleanor envied them. How do they do it? She wondered. How can they be so careless? She didn't realize they weren't careless. They were just human. They allowed themselves to be real. Eleanor didn't have that luxury. She was on a mission. She was rewriting history. She was undoing the damage of her own father. But in trying so hard not to be him, she was becoming a different kind of tyrant. She was a tyrant of kindness. She was a dictator of gentleness. She was creating a home where negative emotions were illegal. Sadness was hushed. Anger was buried. Fear was hidden. She thought she was creating heaven. She didn't realize she was building a stage, and she was the only actor playing a role she couldn't sustain. She was tired.
God, she was so tired. Her bones felt like lead. Her mind felt like a fog. But she kept going. I will not fail her, she whispered at 3 a.m. I will be the perfect mother, even if it kills me. She didn't know that the killing part was closer than she thought. And she didn't know that the mask was about to slip.
The explosion didn't happen during a crisis. It didn't happen when Richard lost his job. It didn't happen when the bank called about the mortgage. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon over grape juice. Claire was 7 years old. She was wearing a white dress. Eleanor had ironed it that morning. She wanted Claire to look perfect. She wanted the house to look perfect. It had been a terrible week. Richard had disappeared for 2 days. He had drained their savings account. The creditors were calling the house every hour. Eleanor hadn't slept in 48 hours. Her nerves were frayed wires. She was vibrating with anxiety. She was holding the sky up with her bare hands. She was cleaning the living room. She was scrubbing a stain on the wall. She was trying to control the environment because she couldn't control her life. Claire came running in. She was laughing. She was holding a glass of grape juice. Eleanor had told her 1,000 times, no juice in the living room. "Look, Mommy!" Claire shouted. She twirled. The glass slipped from her hand. It seemed to fall in slow motion. Eleanor watched it go. The glass hit the white carpet. It shattered. The purple liquid exploded. It sprayed across the pristine rug. It sprayed across the white sofa. It sprayed across Eleanor's legs. Something inside Eleanor snapped. The wire broke. The dam burst. All the fear, all the exhaustion, all the rage she had buried for 30 years came rushing up. It wasn't about the juice. It was about the chaos. It was about the one thing she couldn't control. It was the final straw on a broken back. She didn't think, she reacted. The monster she had been hiding finally broke out of the cage. "What is wrong with you?" Eleanor screamed. Her voice was unrecognizable. It was a guttural roar. It was her father's voice. She lunged forward. She grabbed Claire's arm. She grabbed it hard. Her fingers dug into the soft flesh. She shook her daughter. "I told you," she screamed. "I told you no juice. Look at this mess. Look what you did. You are so clumsy." The words flew out of her mouth like bullets. Clumsy. The word her father used. The word she hated most in the world. She saw Claire's face. The laughter was gone. Her eyes were wide with terror. She shrank back. She looked at Eleanor like she was a stranger, like she was a monster.
Claire started to cry. It was a high, terrified wail. She tried to pull her arm away. "Mommy, you're hurting me." That sentence hit Eleanor like a physical blow. "You're hurting me." Time froze. The red mist cleared. Eleanor looked down. She saw her hand gripping Claire's arm. She saw the white knuckles. She saw the fear in her daughter's eyes. She let go instantly. Claire stumbled back. She held her arm. She was sobbing. Eleanor stood there, shaking. The silence in the room was deafening. The smell of grape juice filled the air. She looked in the mirror above the sofa. She saw her own face. Her face was twisted in rage. Her eyes were wild. She didn't see Eleanor. She saw her father. She saw the man she hated. She saw the abuser. She had become him. After 7 years of perfection, after 7 years of swallowing her anger, in 10 seconds she had undone it all. She fell to her knees. "Oh God," she whispered. "Oh God, no!" She tried to reach for Claire. "Baby, I'm sorry. Mommy is so sorry." But Claire flinched. She took a step back. She didn't trust the hands that had just grabbed her. That flinch destroyed Eleanor. It confirmed her worst fear. She was unsafe. She was toxic. She was bad. "It's okay, Mommy," Claire sobbed. "I'm sorry I spilled it. Don't be mad." Claire was apologizing, just like Eleanor used to apologize to her father. The cycle was repeating. The infection had passed to the next generation. Eleanor felt a cold darkness swallow her heart. She realized she had failed. The vow was broken. The perfection was a lie. She cleaned the carpet. She scrubbed the purple stain until her fingers bled. She scrubbed and scrubbed, trying to erase the moment. But she couldn't erase the look in Claire's eyes. It was branded on her memory. She hugged Claire later. She bought her ice cream. She read her 3 bedtime stories. She tried to buy back her soul. But that night, lying in the dark, Eleanor put herself on trial. The verdict was guilty. The sentence was life without parole. She had become the thing she feared most. She was a mother who hurt her child. And in Eleanor's mind, there was no forgiveness for that. Not in this world or the next. A bruise on Claire's arm faded in 2 days. It was barely a mark, just a small yellow smudge. Claire forgot about it by the weekend. Children are resilient. They forgive easily. Claire was back to laughing, back to hugging her mother, back to spilling things without fear. But Eleanor didn't forget. She couldn't. That moment became the cornerstone of her identity. It became the lens through which she viewed her entire life. She started a file in her mind, a dossier. Subject, Eleanor. Crime, being a monster. She stopped trusting herself. She stopped trusting her instincts. She analyzed every interaction she had with her daughter. If she felt impatient, she panicked. Here it comes. The anger is coming back. I have to push it down. She became stiff. She became formal. She pulled away emotionally because she thought she was protecting Claire from her darkness. I am dangerous. My love is dangerous. I have to be careful. She started collecting evidence to prove her guilt. She ignored all the evidence of her goodness. She ignored all the thousands of meals, the hugs, the lullabies. Those didn't count. Those were just acting. The scream, that was the real thing. That was the truth leaking out. Every subsequent mistake was added to the file. When she forgot to sign a permission slip, she didn't think, oops. She thought, I am negligent. I am failing her. When she burnt the dinner, she didn't think, I'm distracted. She thought, I can't even feed her properly. I am useless. When she missed a soccer game because Richard was sick, she thought, I am abandoning her, just like my father abandoned me. She wrote it all down in the ledger. She kept a tally of her sins, and the list grew longer every day. She started to parent out of guilt. She stopped parenting out of joy. Every nice thing she did was a reparation payment. She bought Claire expensive clothes she couldn't afford. She let Claire stay up late. She never said no again. She was afraid that if she said no, she would turn into the monster again. She lost her authority. She became a servant to her daughter. She tried to buy forgiveness with compliance. She looked at other mothers. They seemed so natural.
They seemed so innocent. Eleanor felt like a criminal, hiding in plain sight. If they knew, she thought. If they knew I grabbed her arm, if they knew I screamed, they would take her away. She lived in terror of being exposed. She worked harder at the church. She baked more cakes for the neighbors. She tried to build a wall of good deeds to hide the rot inside. But at night, the file opened. She replayed the tape, the grape juice, the scream, the fear in Claire's eyes. She edited the memory. In her head, it got worse. In her head, she didn't just grab the arm. She hit her. She beat her. The memory morphed into a nightmare. She conflated her own actions with her father's actions. She couldn't tell the difference anymore. She looked in the mirror and saw a villain. She saw a woman who didn't deserve to be a mother. I ruined her, she whispered to her reflection. I broke her spirit. She will never recover. It wasn't true. Claire was fine. Claire was happy. Claire was thriving. But Eleanor couldn't see the reality. She could only see the guilt. She denied herself joy. She felt she didn't deserve to be happy. If she caught herself laughing, she stopped. How dare you laugh, she thought, after what you did. She punished herself with work. She punished herself with self-denial. She wore old clothes. She ate the burnt pieces of toast. She took the coldest showers. It was a penance, a silent, daily penance for a crime that had been forgiven by everyone except the judge in her head. She was building a prison cell, brick by brick, and she was locking herself inside, throwing away the key, and convincing herself that she deserved the darkness. Time moved on, as it always does. Claire grew up. She wasn't a perfect child. She was human. She was messy. She made mistakes, just like everyone else. When Claire was 16, she crashed the family car. She had been texting. It was foolish. It was dangerous. The car was totaled. Claire stood in the driveway, weeping. She was terrified. She expected the wrath of God. She expected the reaction Eleanor had received from her own father. But Eleanor didn't yell. She didn't lecture. She walked out to the driveway. She saw the crumpled metal. She saw her daughter's shaking shoulders. Eleanor opened her arms. She pulled Claire into a hug. "It's okay, baby. It's just a car. You are safe. That is all that matters." "I was so stupid," Claire sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "We all do stupid things," Eleanor said gently. "Forgive yourself, honey. I forgive you. It's already forgotten." She meant it. She felt no anger. She only felt relief. She washed the accident away with love. She gave Claire the grace she never gave herself. A few years later, Claire dropped out of college. She wanted to travel. It was a risky choice. It was expensive. It wasn't sensible. Eleanor's friends judged. They said, "You should be firmer with her. She is throwing her life away." But Eleanor defended her daughter. She needs to find her own path. She is young. She is allowed to explore. I trust her. She gave Claire permission to fail. She gave Claire permission to be lost. She championed her daughter's right to be imperfect. Then Richard got sick. The alcohol finally caught up with his liver. He was dying. It was a slow, ugly death.
He was not a good patient. He was angry. He was scared. He lashed out at the nurses. He lashed out at Eleanor. But Eleanor was a rock. She sat by his bed for months. She wiped his brow. She changed his sheets. She held his hand while he cursed the world. One night, near the end, Richard started to cry. "I was a bad husband," he rasped. "I wasted our money. I cheated. I ruined your life." Eleanor shushed him. She smoothed his hair. "Hush now," she said. "That is in the past. I don't remember any of it." "Can you forgive me?" he asked. He looked like a frightened child. "I forgave you a long time ago, Richard," she said. And she had. She held no bitterness. She looked at this broken man and saw only a soul in pain. She ushered him out of the world with kindness. She buried him with dignity. She spoke only well of him at the funeral. She was the queen of forgiveness. She handed it out like candy. She had an endless supply for the liars, the cheaters, and the reckless. But when she looked in the mirror, the supply ran dry. She would stand in front of the glass at night. She would take off her makeup. She would look at her own eyes. And the judge would bang the gavel. "You are a fraud," the voice said. "You are pretending to be good. But we know the truth. We know about the grape juice. We know about the scream," the voice whispered. "We know you are violent. We know you are just like your father." It didn't matter that 40 years had passed. It didn't matter that she had never raised her voice again. The statute of limitations never expired for Eleanor. She replayed the tape of that Tuesday afternoon, but in her mind the tape had warped. It had grown darker. In her memory, she didn't just grab Claire's arm. She threw her. She hit her. The memory had morphed into a nightmare. She had convicted herself of a felony when she had committed a misdemeanor. She looked at her hands, the same hands that nursed her dying husband, the same hands that held her weeping daughter. To the world, they were healing hands. To Eleanor, they were weapons. She denied herself small joys. She didn't buy new clothes. "You don't deserve pretty things," she thought. "Pretty things are for good mothers." She didn't take vacations. "You don't deserve to rest," she thought. "Rest is for people who haven't sinned." She lived by a double standard that was suffocating. If a stranger bumped into her, she apologized to them. If she bumped into a table, she cursed her own clumsiness. She was the defense attorney for the entire human race. She could find a mitigating factor for any crime. She could explain away any cruelty. But for herself, she was the prosecutor. And she was ruthless. She suppressed evidence of her own goodness. She threw out the character witnesses. She focused only on the crime, the one moment of loss of control, the one moment she was human. She believed that one bad moment defined her entire existence. She believed that a single drop of poison ruined the whole well. She didn't see the tragedy. She didn't see that she was abusing herself far worse than Richard ever did. Richard beat her down with words. Her father beat her down with fear. But Eleanor? She beat herself down with silence. She was the jailer who locked the cell door from the inside. She held the key in her hand every single day, but she refused to turn it, because deep down, she believed the prison was where she belonged.
The end came quietly for Eleanor. It wasn't a dramatic illness. Her heart just got tired. It had been beating for everyone else for 80 years. It was worn out. I was her nurse. I'd been with her for 3 weeks. I knew the legend of the saint. I saw the visitors. I saw the flowers. But I also saw the nights. Hospice nurses see the truth. We see people when the masks come off.
We see the fear at 3 a.m. We hear the confessions that are whispered in the dark. It was a Thursday evening. The room was dim. Claire had just left. She had been sitting there for hours, reading to her mother. She kissed Eleanor's forehead before she walked out. "I love you, Mom," Claire had said. "You are the best mom in the world." Eleanor had smiled. She squeezed Claire's hand. But the moment the door closed, the smile vanished. It dropped off her face like a heavy curtain. She let out a sound. It wasn't a cry. It was a groan, a deep, guttural sound of pain. I moved to the bed. "Are you in pain, Eleanor?" I asked. "Do you need more morphine?" She shook her head. She looked at the door, where Claire had just exited. Her eyes were filled with tears, but they weren't happy tears. They were tears of guilt. "She doesn't know," Eleanor whispered. Her voice was thin. "She doesn't know what I did." I sat down. "What did you do, Eleanor?" I asked gently. I expected a confession of a secret affair or a stolen necklace. "She ruined her," Eleanor said. "I broke her spirit. I was a terrible mother." I looked at the door. I thought about the woman who had just left. Claire was confident. She was kind. She was successful. She clearly adored her mother. "Eleanor," I said, "Claire loves you. She thinks you are a saint. I see the way she looks at you. That is not the look of a ruined child." She forgot. She blocked it out. But I remember. I remember the grape juice. She told me the story. She told me about the white carpet. She told me about the scream. She told me about grabbing the arm. She told it like it was a murder confession. She trembled. She sweated. She waited for me to recoil in horror. I listened. I waited for the rest. I waited for the part where she hit her, or the part where she locked her in a closet. But that was it. One scream, one grab, 40 years ago. "Eleanor," I said softly, "you are human. You snapped once. You were under terrible stress. You apologized." She looked at me like I was crazy. "I hurt her," she hissed. "I scared her. I saw the fear in her eyes. I promised I would never be like my father, and I became him. You're not your father. Your father terrorized you for years. You had one bad afternoon. There was a difference." "It only takes once," she said stubbornly. "Once is enough to break a trust. Once is enough to stain a soul." "You forgave Richard," I said. "You told me he hit you. You told me he cheated. You forgave him. Why is his sin forgivable, but yours isn't?" She paused. She looked at the ceiling. "Because he was broken," she said. "He couldn't help it. He had a hard life." "And you?" I asked. "Didn't you have a hard life? Didn't you have a hard father? Why does Richard get empathy but you get none?" "Because I should have known better," she whispered. "I knew what it felt like. I knew how much it hurt, and I did it anyway." That makes it a choice, she said. That makes it evil. I tried to reason with her. I tried to show her the evidence. Look at Claire. She is happy. If you were a monster, she wouldn't be here holding your hand. She is here because she is good, not because I am good. She overcame my bad parenting. She survived me. She refused to accept the credit. She refused to accept the love. She twisted every act of kindness into proof of her own failure. If Claire was kind, it was despite Eleanor. If Claire was happy, it was a miracle. I realized then that I couldn't save her. I couldn't talk her out of 40 years of self-hatred in 1 hour. The groove in her brain was too deep. The story was too set. She had built an entire identity around this guilt. It was the pillar that held up her world. If she let go of the guilt, who would she be? She would just be a woman who made a mistake. And that was too terrifying. Being a monster was dramatic. Being a human was ordinary. She wanted to be punished. She felt she owed a debt, and she was determined to pay it until her very last breath. I held her hand. I let her cry. I realized that the hardest person to forgive is the one we see in the mirror. Because we know the intent. We know the dark thoughts. We know the selfishness. We judge ourselves by our insides, while we judge others by their outsides. Eleanor knew her own darkness, and she couldn't forgive it, even as the light was fading from her eyes.
That night I sat by her bed and watched her sleep. She looked peaceful in repose. The tension was gone from her face. She looked like the saint everyone thought she was.
But I knew the war that was raging inside her head, and I started to understand the strategy. I started to understand why she held on to the guilt so tightly. It was a defense mechanism. It was a shield. Eleanor was terrified of being bad. Her father had drilled that fear into her. Bad girls get punished. Bad girls get hurt. So she created a system, a failsafe. If she punished herself first, no one else could punish her. If she was her own harshest critic, the world couldn't hurt her. Self-flagellation was a form of armor. It was a preemptive strike. I already know I'm terrible, her behavior said. I am already suffering for it, so you don't need to yell at me. You don't need to hit me. I am doing the job for you. It was a brilliant, twisted logic. It kept her safe. It kept her humble. It kept her vigilant. If she forgave herself, she might get lazy. She might slip. She might become her father. The guilt was the leash that kept the monster in check. She was the prison guard of her own soul. She walked the perimeter day and night. She checked the locks. She watched the prisoner, herself, with a loaded gun. She was terrified that if the prisoner escaped, chaos would return. The grape juice would spill again. The scream would come back. So she kept herself in solitary confinement. She denied herself the sunlight of self-love. She fed herself the bread and water of duty. She thought she was protecting the world from herself. She thought she was doing us all a favor by locking Eleanor away. But she was wrong. The prisoner she locked away wasn't a monster. It was a woman who needed to be loved. It was the little girl who wanted to dance. It was the wife who wanted to be held. It was the mother who wanted to relax. She had starved that woman to death. I looked at her frail body in the bed. I wanted to shake her awake. I wanted to scream, "You are innocent. The trial is over. You can go free." But she wouldn't believe me. She had been in prison so long she had fallen in love with the bars. She felt safe inside the cell.
The outside world, the world of grace, was too big, too unpredictable. She sat on the edge of letting go. I could see it in her eyes sometimes, a flicker of longing, a wish to just be okay. But the habit was too strong. The neural pathways were paved with concrete. It is hard to teach an old brain new tricks, especially when that brain is programmed for survival. She believed that self-forgiveness was a sin. She believed it was arrogance. Who am I to let myself off the hook, she thought. Only God can do that. But she didn't wait for God. She usurped his role. She sat on the throne of judgment and slammed the gavel down. Guilty, she said, guilty forever. She was a tyrant to herself. She was a dictator. And the saddest part was that she was a benevolent leader to everyone else. She ruled her kingdom with kindness, but she ruled her own heart with an iron fist. I wondered what would happen when she died. I wondered if she would finally meet her maker. I imagined God looking at her. I imagined him saying, "Eleanor, why were you so hard on my creation? Why did you hate the woman I made?" I imagined her trying to explain the grape juice. I imagined God laughing. "The grape juice?" he would ask. "My child, I forgot that before it even dried." I hoped she would find that peace. I hoped death would be the amnesty she refused to grant herself in life. But for now, she was still here, still guarding the cell, still clutching the keys, still refusing to open the door. She was the warden of a prison with only one inmate, and she was determined to serve the full sentence, right down to the very last second.
Eleanor passed away at 4 in the morning. The hospital was quiet. The world outside was dark. It wasn't a dramatic exit. There were no final words of wisdom. There was no bright light filling the room. She simply took a breath, and then she didn't take another. Her chest settled. Her hand went limp in mine. The struggle was finally over. The warden had left the building. I woke Claire up. She was sleeping in the chair, curled up like a child. I touched her shoulder. "Claire," I said softly, "she's gone." Claire crumbled. She fell onto her mother's chest. She wept with the pure, raw grief of a daughter who has lost her anchor. "Mom," she sobbed, "don't go. You can't go." I stood back and watched. I saw the love pouring out of Claire. It was a tidal wave. It was proof that Eleanor had succeeded. She had broken the cycle. She had raised a child who knew how to love. But Eleanor didn't die knowing that. She died thinking she was a fraud. She died thinking she had ruined the very woman who was now weeping over her body. That is the unfinished business. That is the tragedy that haunts me. Eleanor finished every task on her to-do list. She paid every bill. She washed every dish. She mended every tear in the fabric of her family. But she left the most important work undone. She never made peace with herself. She left the earth without ever shaking hands with the woman in the mirror. She died with a debt that was already paid. She spent 80 years paying off a mortgage on her soul that had been canceled decades ago. She just refused to open the letter that said paid in full. I looked at her face. The lines of worry were finally smoothing out. Death is the ultimate relaxation. The tension around her eyes was gone. She finally looked innocent. It broke my heart that she had to die to find that innocence. It broke my heart that she couldn't find it while she was eating toast or watching the sunset or holding her grandchild. She denied herself the sweetness of life because she thought she didn't deserve the sugar. She ate the crusts. She took the leftovers. She lived on a diet of penance. I walked to the window. The sun was starting to rise. A pink glow was spreading across the sky. The world was waking up
indifferent to the loss of the saint of 4th Street. I thought about the lesson Eleanor left behind. It wasn't a lesson about kindness. We already knew she was kind. It was a warning. A bright red warning flare shot into the sky. The warning is this: you cannot be a hero to the world and a villain to yourself. It doesn't work. Eventually, the dissonance will eat you alive. We are often the harshest judges of our own lives. We judge ourselves by our thoughts, our dark impulses, our secret fears. We judge others by their actions, their smiles, their public faces. It is an unfair trial. We have all the evidence against ourselves and only the press releases from everyone else. Eleanor knew her own shadow, so she assumed she was made of darkness. She didn't realize that the shadow is just part of the picture. She didn't realize that the light she cast on others was real. She thought it was a trick. I looked back at Claire. She was stroking her mother's hair. "She was perfect," Claire whispered. "She was the best person I ever knew." Claire will live the rest of her life believing her mother was a saint. And Eleanor lived her whole life believing she was a sinner. Both things were true, and both things were false. Eleanor was just a woman, a messy, frightened, loving, imperfect human being. But she never allowed herself the luxury of being human. She demanded divinity from herself, and when she couldn't reach it, she punished herself with mediocrity. She punished herself with silence. She punished herself with a life half-lived. This is the trap of the good person. We think that if we are hard on ourselves, we're being moral. We think that self-flagellation is a form of piety. But it isn't piety. It is waste. It is a waste of joy. It is a waste of love. It is a waste of the precious, limited time we are given. God didn't put us here to be our own executioners. He didn't put us here to keep a ledger of every grape juice stain and every raised voice. He put us here to learn, to stumble, to get back up, and to forgive the person who stumbled, especially if that person is us.
I packed up Eleanor's things, her glasses, her rosary beads, a book she never finished. Small, ordinary objects. I found a small mirror in her bedside drawer. I held it up. I looked at my own face. I saw the lines. I saw the tiredness. I saw my own regrets looking back at me. I thought about the things I haven't forgiven myself for, the arguments, the missed calls, the selfishness, the times I wasn't a saint. I looked into my own eyes. "I forgive you," I whispered. It felt strange. It felt clunky. It felt like a lie. But I said it again. "I forgive you." I did it for Eleanor. I did it because she couldn't. I did it because I don't want to die in a prison of my own making. Forgiveness is not a feeling. It is a muscle. You have to exercise it. You have to lift the heavy weight of your own guilt every single day until it gets lighter. Eleanor stopped lifting. She let the weight crush her. She let it pin her to the floor for 40 years. Don't make that mistake. Don't wait for the deathbed to let go of the grudge against yourself. Don't wait for the hospice nurse to tell you that you are innocent. Declare your own innocence right now, today. Look in the mirror. Look at the stranger staring back. That stranger has been through a lot. That stranger is trying their best. That stranger deserves a break. Give them the grace you give to the cashier who drops your change. Give them the grace you give to the dog who chews your slipper. Give them the grace Eleanor gave to everyone except herself. Claire stood up. She wiped her eyes. She looked at me. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for taking care of her." "It was an honor," I said. And it was. It was an honor to witness her life, and it was a terrifying privilege to witness her regret. She taught me how to be kind, but more importantly, she taught me that kindness has to start at home. It has to start in your own chest. If you don't love the person in the mirror, you can't truly love anyone else. You can only serve them. You can only please them, but you can't join them in the light. Eleanor died in the shadows, but she left us a map to the sun. The map says, "Put down the gavel. Open the cell door. Walk out. You are free. You have always been free." Thank you for listening to this story in English. Eleanor's story is a tragedy, but it is also a mirror. How many of us are holding on to a grape juice moment? How many of us are punishing ourselves for crimes we have already paid for? Here at Daily English Stories, we share the best English stories to help you think in English and heal your heart. Building a daily English habit of reflection is the key to both fluency and wisdom. If you are looking to improve your English through story, this channel is your sanctuary. From Learn English through Story Level 3 to deep psychological narratives, we provide stories for listening skills that stay with you. This English audiobook is designed for English listening practice and personal growth. Use it for English speaking practice by shadowing the narrator, or simply let the storytelling audiobook guide you to a place of self-forgiveness. Don't wait until the end. Start your English learning journey and your healing journey today. This is habit building for English learners with a soul. Subscribe for your English fluency story every day. And please, forgive the person in the mirror. I will see you in the next video.